Before today's video, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on the latest videos. If you want to see a case or topic covered by Paranormally Listed, then go to criminallylisted.com and fill out the questionnaire under the Suggest a Case tab. Just before we start this video, we want to note that there are two ways to say the name of the board that's the topic of today's video: Ouija and Ouija. Both are acceptable pronunciations according to the Oxford English Dictionary and Merriam-Webster. So we will be using the pronunciation Ouija because that's what we're used to. Number 3, William Fuld. William Fuld knelt on the floor of a Baltimore factory repairing a broken board. It was thankless, back-breaking work, and William knew he could do so much better. It was America's Gilded Age, the 1890s, when it seemed anything was possible for a man with guile and gumption. Industrial titans like Henry Ford and Thomas Edison starred in William's dreams, and he looked to them as prime examples of what a man could become. The factory William worked at was the Kennard Novelty Company, which made toys and board games. There was one particular board game William believed could be much, much more. The Hindu talking board, or Egyptian luck board, which promised to unlock the secrets of mysticism and give its user a glimpse beyond the afterlife. It was a lark, a game, something like today's Magic 8-Ball, used for fun at parties. But William knew that during the late 19th century, the spiritualism movement was growing in America. He believed with a few tweaks and the right marketing, Kennard's talking board could be a smash success. But his pitch to his bosses was met with a shrug. So William Fuld did what he thought any good industrious titan would do. He started his own company and designed his own talking board. But unlike his old bosses, he went down to the patent office to lay claim to the board's design. He even gave it a catchy name. A name, legend has it, that was chosen by a ghost after William used the board to ask what he should call it. The spirit spelled back Ouija. Yet, while the spirits from the other side did offer William a name for his board, it's also possible that they weren't thrilled with his shady ethics. Because from the moment he laid claim to inventing the Ouija board, bad stuff started to happen to William Fuld. First, and probably most unsurprising, was the war of words that resulted from Fuld's invention claim. For weeks, the editorial pages of the Baltimore Sun printed back and forth letters from those claiming William stole the Ouija board idea from Kennard. Wrote Elijah Bond in one of those letters, "How Fuld comes to own it, I do not know, but it is the height of audacity for him to claim he is or was the inventor." William shrugged off the accusations. He filed the patent. Enough said. Then William noticed a number of unfortunate accidents happening at his factory. That's almost easy to understand, as he staffed the factory with teenage boys to save money. And though automobiles were common by 1912, William again tried to save money by continuing to deliver his Ouija boards by horse-drawn carriage, until the man in charge of his stables, George Bartenstalter, dropped dead. At only age 62, the man was reported to the Sun to be in good health when he suddenly dropped to the barn floor with convulsions. William Fuld bought a car after that, but maybe he should have stuck with the horses, because on October 27, 1914, William's son, William Jr., was behind the wheel when his car slammed into a horse-drawn carriage carrying a family of 6. The carriage overturned, and the family was thrown out of their seats. 3-year-old Lena was killed instantly when she struck her head on the road. An autopsy later said she died from a fractured skull and a massive brain hemorrhage. Lena's grieving father, Jacob, sued William Fuld Sr., asking the court for $1,000 in damages. In turn, William Fuld hired the best lawyer in town, who brought the case to trial. A jury acquitted William and his son of any wrongdoing. He didn't have to pay 1 red cent of the money he made from his Ouija boards. And there was a lot of money. During the 10s and 20s, the Ouija board's popularity exploded. Norman Rockwell even painted a Saturday Evening Post cover with the board featured front and center. They were flying off the shelves so fast The stores took to advertising when they got new boards in stock. It was the Cabbage Patch Doll or the Tickle Me Elmo of its day. And by 1927, the Ouija board had made William Fuld a millionaire. So it was only natural that he decided to invest some of the money into improvements of his factory. On the morning of February 25, 1927, William Fuld took a workman up to the roof of his factory to show that a flagpole needed to be replaced. But when he grabbed an iron railing to steady himself, the handle somehow came loose, and William fell backwards over the roof's edge, landing on the pavement 3 stories below. An autopsy later revealed he suffered 5 broken ribs, 2 broken arms, and a broken leg, to go along with his fractured skull and massive brain hemorrhage. William Fuld believed that for many of his 53 years, he could make millions from the Ouija board, but he never asked the Ouija board itself whether he should. Number 2. Clothilde Marchand. In 1930, sculptor and amateur anthropologist Henri Marchand was a well-respected artist living in Buffalo, New York. After a successful stint in Manhattan, the Buffalo Museum of Science hired Henri to create wax dioramas for its displays. And Henri's specialty was Native American culture and its people. Henri took so many car trips to the nearby Cattaraugus Reservation that he eventually set up a cabin studio there. We call it a cabin studio, but it's more like a love nest. For days on end, the 53-year-old Henri would work alone in his studio, enticing many Aboriginal young women on the reservation to help him with his work. Making love to them, he said later, was the only way to get them comfortable enough to pose for his sculptures. Okay, so maybe Henri was a bit of a monster. So Henri's wife, Clothilde, was, by many accounts, a very nice lady who loved her children and her family's many pets. So she had no idea of her husband's lecherous behavior, and most agreed she certainly didn't deserve to get murdered because of it. But many at the time suspected that's exactly what happened. Though the woman who was eventually arrested for the crime brought forth a defense that scandalized the court and the city. They claimed the murder was the revenge undertaken by a spirit from the other side. Nancy Bowen was the 66-year-old wife of a Seneca tribal elder named Sassafras Charlie. Charlie died in 1929 under what Nancy called mysterious circumstances, and she wanted to find out why and how. So she did what a lot of people did during the 1920s and 30s. She turned to the Ouija board. But Ouija boards aren't a solo affair. For best results, you need 2 people. So Nancy then turned to her friend, 36-year-old Lil Jimerson. As they sat across from each other, with the board between them, Lil got in touch with Charlie from beyond the grave. "Who killed you?" she asked, and Charlie responded by spelling out the name Clothilde Marchand. Nancy had no idea who that was. It was such an unusual name. But Lil claimed she knew who it was. It was the wife of the skeevy sculptor who enticed women into his reservation studio. For her part, Nancy was not convinced, until letters began to arrive. Day after day, notes would show up in Nancy's mailbox claiming to be from a woman named Mrs. Dooley. They chronicled a torrid affair between Sassafras Charlie and Clothilde Marchand. The letters also claimed that Clothilde was a white witch who put a spell on Charlie to make him fall in love with her. When the hex didn't work, the letters explained, Clothilde had Charlie killed. That was enough for Nancy to buy in. On March 6, 1930, 12-year-old Henri Jr. came home from school to find his mother hammered to death in their front hall. Police found a rag soaked in chloroform jammed down Clothilde's throat. Neighbors told detectives that they had seen 2 suspicious women outside the Marchand house in the days leading up to the murder. Lily and Nancy were tried together in what became a sensational trial for the city of Buffalo. Nancy swore that the spirit of her dead husband possessed her to kill Clothilde in revenge. But investigators could find no evidence, none scintillia, that Clothilde had anything to do with Charlie's death. At first, Henri Marchand was portrayed as an upstanding citizen, in mourning over the senseless murder of his wife and mother to his children. But the defense lawyers began to parade a string of witnesses who testified to Henri's hands-on approach with his models. For his part, Henri swore that his wife was okay with the extramarital affairs, because it was all for his art, he explained. Lily, Nancy's attorney, posited that perhaps Henri had killed his wife to get out of a loveless marriage. Unfortunately, the defense strategy left the prosecution no choice. They subpoenaed Henri to put him on the stand to admit that Lila Jimerson was one of the many women he had seduced. They posited that Lila used the Ouija board and wrote the Mrs. Dooley letters to trick Nancy into thinking Clothilde had killed Charlie. This was Lila's payback for being jilted by Henri. The admission led to banner headlines that caused newspapers to sell out. In Western New York, Ouija boards sold out too. Retailers couldn't get them in the stores fast enough. Sex and murder, combined with a supernatural defense, led some to declare the Marchand case the trial of the century. But there was ultimately no justice for Clothilde. A judge declared a mistrial after Lila fell ill. When she was well enough to return to court, a new jury acquitted her of any wrongdoing in the affair. Nancy Bowen pled guilty to manslaughter and was released with time served. During that second trial in 1931, Henri Marchand watched on from the gallery with his 18-year-old niece, who had recently become his second wife. Number 1. Estefania Lazaro. If you have ever used or even seen a Ouija board, you might know that little mouse-like thing people put their fingers on is called a planchette. It's a French word meaning little plank, and it's the whole key to using nearly every kind of talking board. The planchette has a little glass eye in the center that magnifies the letter or word a spirit from the afterworld is trying to communicate. However, 16-year-old Estefania Lazaro and her teenage friends didn't have a planchette that day in March 1990 in Madrid, Spain. So they improvised, using a small, clear drinking glass turned upside down atop of the board. In hindsight, this may have been a fatal mistake. While huddled on the floor of the girls' bathroom at school during a free period, the three girls began their session. One of the girls, apparently, had recently lost her boyfriend and wanted to contact him in the afterlife just to see if he was doing alright. For her part, Estefania's sister, Maria Nella, warned them not to take part in the seance. As she watched from the bathroom counter, she worried about what the older girls were doing. They scoffed at the girl. It's only a game, they said. Estefania and her girlfriends began by asking typical Ouija board questions. Are you there? Can you hear us? That sort of thing. And to their delight, the drinking glass slid across the board. The sister, Marianella, was the one who noticed the drinking glass was filling with a white vapor. Before she could say anything, however, a teacher burst into the bathroom. When she saw what the girls were doing, she snatched the board away from them. As she did, the glass smashed on the tile floor, and the white smoky air that had been collecting in the glass floated over the girls, before Estefania accidentally inhaled it, whatever it was. Before we continue, we think it's important to point out that the details of this story come from various eyewitnesses in the bathroom, and all their statements were recorded in the official police reports that came later. According to Estefania's mother, the teacher who grabbed the board from the girls felt so guilty about what she had done, she quit her job with the school. Perhaps she felt responsible for the fate of poor Estefania and the fate of her family. Though her mom and dad described Estefania before the events of March 1990 as a typical 16-year-old girl, they said that after the Ouija board incident, Estefania's demeanor began to change. She became willful, they said. There were angry outbursts and threats of physical violence. Then came the seizures. At first, doctors chalked them up to epilepsy, likely inherited from Estefania's mother, Concepcion. But medication and treatment had no effect. Then on July 13th, 1991, Estefania had a seizure so powerful it caused her to foam at the mouth. The girl's parents brought her to the hospital, where she slipped into a coma. She died that night due to pulmonary asphyxia brought on by one of the seizure's powerful contractions. She was just 17 years old. Estefania's death, though tragic, wasn't in itself paranormally weird. A number of medical conditions, along with her age, could have accounted for her change in behavior and subsequent seizures. What has raised the eyebrows of the paranormally curious, however, is what happened next. As Estefania's parents and 4 siblings went to war with a powerful poltergeist in their home. The hauntings started out harmlessly enough with the typical campfire ghost stories. A sudden cold draft, strange tugging at bed covers, ethereal voices coming from within the walls. But it soon escalated. A drinking glass zipping across the room and smashing against a wall. The family's pet poodle lifting into the air with a yelp as if it had been kicked. The family's many crucifixes found hanging upside down one morning. When they watched on in horror as claw marks shredded a poster in Estefania's room, the Lazaro family realized they were living in a nightmare. With no one else to turn to, they called the police. Chief Inspector Jose Pedro Negri, along with 5 uniformed officers, arrived at the Lazaro's apartment to find them huddled outside in the cold. They didn't know where else to go, and they weren't going back inside. As they searched the Lazaro house, Inspector Negri felt unease. He later said he felt a cold discomfort as he walked through the rooms of the flat. A closet door slammed shut despite there being no one else in the place. He entered Estefania's room and made note of the many crucifixes on the walls. When he passed the room again later, he was dumbfounded to see all the crosses were now upside down. As he wrote in his police report, there's a series of phenomena that can't be explained. 2 years after the family's haunting began, things had begun to settle down. When the haunting seemed to dissipate, some paranormal investigators called it a dead cell. But then, on November 1st, 1993, All Saints' Day, Concepcion entered Estefania's room to dust. The family had kept the room just as the girl had left it before she died, but they had added a large framed photo of the teen on the bedside table. Concepcion came in. She saw the frame face down on the floor. Picking it up, she was horrified to see that the picture inside had been melted and scorched, leaving the frame, the table, and the floor untouched. The Estefania Gutierrez Lazaro case, also known as the Vallecas case due to the neighborhood in which they lived in Madrid, is one of the most haunted stories to come out of Spain in recent years. In 2017, filmmakers used the story as an inspiration for the chilling horror movie called Veronica, which is available on Netflix, if you're game. Thank you so much for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. If you did find it interesting, please make sure you subscribe. We'll have a new video about the paranormal every week. If you just discovered this channel, please make sure you check out our other channel, Criminally Listed. We have over 325 videos featuring bizarre but true crime stories. You can find it at youtube.com/criminallylisted. We also have a podcast about cold cases that were eventually solved called Criminally Listed Presents Into the Killing. You can find it on Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, and anywhere you find great podcasts. But that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.